surface, it's hard for me to understand why we would remove that simple step of looking into someone and making sure they didn't have past issues, having done something negative to animals. And there's a lot, I mean, even PETA's come out against it, or in support of implementing that back. So I'm just curious what the rationale was behind that.
So I'm happy to start, and then I'm sure Director Diamond will probably have more context to add. PETA is an animal rights organization, not necessarily an animal welfare organization. And by that I mean, on one side of the spectrum you have no kill, which means that you are euthanizing no more than 10% of your population. And a lot of people might argue that that could lead to warehousing of animals, and is that actually humane? Many people will argue that, but you're keeping as many animals alive and you're giving them a second chance. On the other side over here, we have PETA, which is focused on the idea that humane treatment is not being in a cage, and so they prefer euthanasia. And so many shelters that are involved in PETA have as low as a 20% live release rate, because they would rather see a dog euthanized than live in a cage. And you can understand all the complexities with that. So when I talk about extremes, that's where I'm coming from. A lot of people don't realize that about PETA, and PETA has an incredibly strong following, which is why all of you have gotten emails from people outside of this city and state even. The policy as it stands, open adoptions, does not mean we just open all the kennels and say, you know, Godspeed, good luck. It means that instead of having an arbitrary application that might not actually tell you what you need to know about that person, you're instead having a real conversation with them. There was I'm good friends with a behavioral person who works in the animal welfare space. She told me the story of being at a conference and someone asked, how many of you don't adopt to people who live in an apartment? And about 3/4 of the room raised their hand. And they said, how many of you live in an apartment? And about 3/4 of them raised their hand. And so they said, why are we still doing this? And that's why so many adoption processes have looked at how strict are we being and for what purpose, and what reality should we just understand? Should we just talk to these people and say, what is your work style like? Are you at home often? Well, you want to get this very active breed. Do you have kids? Do you have another dog? And really having those conversations to be able to match an appropriate animal with that person. When it comes to Mycase, we have a system called Chameleon. That is just like BNS uses Acela and DPW uses N4, ACS uses Chameleon. That's where we track all of our kennel stats and medical records. That's where we track enforcement records. And so staff look in Chameleon to see animal welfare related offenses. They can see total history of anything that anyone's done related to animal cruelty or anything within Marion County. For a period of time, we added the Mycase layer on top of that. And what we found was that there were staff members who were using it excessively. There were staff members who at times decided they were going to find a reason not to adopt an animal out. There were times where staff members were not being very objective with what they saw. And in some cases, that's because these are younger individuals who maybe haven't even lived long enough to have a have a life-altering mistake, let alone it be on a public record. Right, so they see a DUI or a public intox from a few years ago, and they think this person probably shouldn't own an animal. Well, I know people with DUIs who are parents and contribute to this community, and so we realized we needed to focus in how we were really working with potential adoptees and how we were really assessing potential adoptees and removing discriminatory processes and removing potentially subjective or biased processes out of that. Kelly, do you?
I think you gave a great summary of it all. It's about talking to the people and meeting the community and our potential pet owners and helping them to make good decisions instead of, just as Director Brands mentioned, we had staff making a lot of discriminatory decisions. It was a very difficult process. It was a reactionary policy that was put into place as a result of one incident. We were denying people the ability to get an animal from us based on arbitrary reasons. And in the end, what that is doing is pushing them to go to the backyard breeders that we don't want them to go to. It's pushing them to send in their friends or family members to lie and adopt for them. It's creating more euthanasia in our shelters because we don't want to adopt to someone because they don't have a car or because, they, made a mistake, 6 years ago. It's just a difficult spot to be in, and we prefer and we're enjoying in the last couple of weeks welcoming people through our doors and greeting them and having great conversations and spending time with them and talking to them about what their family life is like, and is this dog you picked out an appropriate match for you, and if not, let's find you a new dog, and really talk to them about what's going on in their lives. And we are denying people still. We're denying them because we're not able to find good matches for them, but denying them for those arbitrary reasons have just only contributed and will continue to contribute to more euthanasia in our shelter.
Okay. Thank you both for the explanation and understanding of that. I appreciate it, and that's why I wanted to ask it, because I often know that what the media reports is just a surface part of it. There's something much more deeper to it. As elected officials, we probably all know that too well.
Thank you.
Leader Mowry.